I want to talk to you about a design research project that we did at the Rathen Institute with the title Who Designs Determines. First of all, welcome to all of you. So please introduce yourself in the chat with the first online environment that you used. And at the end, there will be room for questions. So you can put them in the chat already or keep them for later. So what I hope you will take home from this webinar is the key takeaway message of the project that we did. And of course, I'll dive deeper into how we got to this conclusion and the method that we used. But at the Rato Institute, we found that the design of apps and online environments really falls short currently. And that digital inclusion actually is more than just accessibility. So often when we speak about inclusion in or related to digital technologies, we assume it to be about a service being accessible. So if a service is accessible for a wide range of people, for example, people with different disabilities can use the service, then we assume it to be inclusive. So often this is also about language used, about getting rid of certain barriers for entry. But we argue and show in this project actually that it's really important to look at inclusion in a different way and see it as more than just about accessibility. But first, a little bit about the institute that I work. So the Rathenau Institute is a Dutch technology assessment institute located in The Hague in the Netherlands. And we have the formal role to actually help Dutch Parliament, so the first and second chamber, with issues regarding science, technology, and innovation. So we do this with our own working program. So we're an independent knowledge institute funded by the Ministry of Science, but we conduct our own research, and we actually I think most of the projects that we do are on our own initiative. So we do also help Parliament with questions they have, but it's mostly actually things that we come up with ourselves. So actually, I hope I can shed some light on, you know, the thing already announced in the title. So design research. Maybe some of you already have experience with this, others might not. But what actually is design research? And for this, I want to highlight this quote by Rua Benjamin, an amazing American scholar, who said we should acknowledge that most people are forced to live in someone else's imagination. So we are actually, and the digital technologies that we use, of course, we all know they are designed by people. They are different choices play a role in how these technologies play out. And often it's the case that for the people using it or societies that are dealing with these technologies, that they are forced to live in someone else's imagination. And actually, design research can help both untangle this imagination put there by someone else, but also design research can help us broaden our own imagination of what's actually possible with technology. And this is important because we see, especially in the case of online environments, we see this very clearly that we are forced to live in someone else's imagination and someone else being big tech companies. So the diversity of online environments, as we, I think, are all familiar with, has declined quite a bit. So I can see the chat right now, but I assume that you know the first online environments that most people used, maybe in the early 2000s or end of the 90s, it was quite a diverse group of environments. Nowadays we are more limited in the online environments that most people use, and also the design choices that have been made by these companies, they do not always benefit the control of users. And here we come in a bit of interesting paradox that we used as a base for this research, which is that these online environments are also, they have the potential to really enable self-expression and connection in society. So it's not just, you know, a lot of people are saying nowadays we should just totally ban social media, we should get rid of these online spaces. And what we try to do with this research is sort of decline that notion and say we can broaden our imagination of what these spaces can look like, because the benefits clearly are there in potential, and banning it doesn't really solve the problem. So the research question we set out with is, how could online environments be designed in a more inclusive way? So it's a really broad question, but it's a typical design research question because it assumes an intervention in the world. How could things get better? Like, what is the possibility for improvement in this space? And the methodology that we used, we based it on this theory called design from the margins. And this is actually a method developed by Afsana Rigot, scholar in the US, who founded the D Center. And what they're saying is, most of the time when technology is designed, it's sort of designed for the mainstream users. So we can see here the normal distribution. So tech companies or developers, they think about what is the sort of main group of users that we're designing for. And then we also have maybe some marginalized users, and we have decentered users. And what they're saying is we should really put those decentered users at the center. And only then can we understand both the potential harms of this technology, but can we also understand how we can improve it actually, and make it better. And designers often see this as edge cases. Maybe you've heard the term before. So it's like, okay, we're designing this for a big group, and of course there will always be edge cases, and maybe some people, will be left out, but that's just part of the part of reality. And what this design methodology states is we shouldn't accept that these people are seen as edge cases, but we should really center them in our research, but also in design practice. And what we did in this study is we used this approach, design from the margins, to actually study both how online environments are currently working and how they could be improved. So we did a case study that I'll explain in a bit. We studied the current design choices of online environments, and we used speculative design to really imagine with each other how these spaces could be improved and how they could be designed differently. And the case study we did together with LGBTI plus people in the Netherlands. And this is especially because this group is also from a research perspective, really interesting group, because these are the people that experience really both extremes of this paradox. So it's people that really benefit potentially a lot from the internet. On the left, you see this bulletin board page, I think from the early 90s, so pre-World Wide Web, on how queer people use the internet very early on to organize. And on the right, you see how TikTok has become the soul of LGBTQ internet. So really queer people using social media as a way of self-expression and connection with others. And also this app, I can't pronounce it correctly. I'm sorry, Xiao Hongshu, which becomes this oasis for trans people in China. So we see actually that this spectrum is very broad. On the one hand, people are really subjected to hate. On the other hand, there is a lot of potential. And here we see an example of how trans people designed a space in virtual reality where they can practice their feminization or masculinization of their voice. So they can practice with each other on how, they can change their voice actually to be better aligned with their gender. So there's a lot of these kind of examples how people are trying to use the internet and online environments as a way to connect and express themselves. But of course, we also know that the graph on the right is in Dutch, but on the left, I think you can already see that LGBTQ plus people experience the most hate and harassment of all kinds of demographics online. So more than people that identify as female, more than Jewish people, Muslims, etc. And also that there's a lot of tension on censoring and suppressing LGBTQI plus voices online. And The interesting thing is that this narrative has really, really shifted to become way more negative about over the past 2 decades. So in 2000, there was this scholar, Young, who said the internet has become a medium where homosexual communities can share information with each other and voice their concerns to the public. And thus, the internet may become what Itel de Solapool called the technology of freedom. So this was a really, really different kind of vibe in academics, but also among people that are historically decentered or marginalized, because they felt, well, this may finally be sort of our technology and something that we have agency over and we can use to connect. We wanted to understand why this has changed so much. So we did research on current platform design. So we studied, this is just an example of the platforms we studied. We studied a bunch more, but we looked at actually how the affordances of these platforms, so that means the things they let you do and they don't let you do. We studied how this affects specifically LGBTI plus people, but all users in general. So we studied the flow of how you can share content, how you see content, what the sign-up process is like. We use this method called the walkthrough method. So this is a methodology where you can systematically study these kind of apps. And we did design sessions with Dutch LGBTI plus people to actually find out preconditions for inclusive design. So we came together with these people in around 5 sessions, and we talked to them about what is it that you need to be to express yourself online? What is it that you need in these online spaces? And that led us to, yeah, some preconditions that I think are super important, not only for LGBTI plus people, but in the end for all internet users actually. And these preconditions were space for self-expression and identity, and space for connection and belonging. These two are sort of the core needs, you could say. So these are also the things that people really long for online. This is the reason that people want to use online spaces. And in order for these needs to be met, of course, there needs to be safety and privacy. So you need to be sure that you are safe online and that you can also be anonymous at times. You need to have control and autonomy over your experience, and you need inclusive content moderation. And we say inclusive content moderation because this also this is both for posting and sharing content as for what you see and what you are exposed to. And all these preconditions, they tie in together. So of course, if you have little control and autonomy, you also may feel less safe, or if you feel really safe but you're not, etc. So these conditions are related to each other. And then we use these preconditions and the study we did of all these platforms to come up with a model of how current online environments work. And this is important because, as you can see in this example, online environments can work in a million different ways we're just not used to right now. So what you see here is this amazing artist, Ben Grosser, who made this mock-up social media where you only have 100 posts for life. So every time you post something, it subtracts by one. And of course, if you would have social media that would function this way, every time you post a hate comment, you see the you see the counter go down, and you're like, oh shit, I only have 50 posts left for the rest of my life. So you are less inclined to share certain kind of things, and it makes you think more about what you put online. And this is just a really, really simple design mock-up to show that all these online spaces can be designed in so many different ways we're just not used to right now. And we argue this is because the user outcomes, so the things that we see online, they are really influenced by a lot of design choices that we usually don't see. So we call this a design choice model of upstream and downstream design choices and outcomes. And ultimately, it's the governance, the business model, and the vision of companies behind these online environments that really decide what the user interface looks like, what kind of data is collected and processed, and thus what the outcomes are. So to give you an example, there's a lot of talk nowadays about banning endless scroll. At least in the EU, there's a lot of people proposing this, also in the European Parliament. So maybe, this could help with addictive features of social media. And while this certainly could be a way to go, we show, I think, in this research and with this model that banning something like anti-scrolling without intervening in the business model and the governance and the vision of these platforms, it will just lead to, them coming up with something else. Because in the end, the anti-scroll is really the outcome of how, data is collected, this interface is designed, etc. So the scroll is there because these platforms are based on maximizing engagement and therefore making money by showing you advertisement. So yeah, you can ban something like that, but it's not really a structural change, we would argue. And because we know that these choices have so much influence, these design choices of these platforms, we set out together with LGBTI plus people to design speculative prototypes based on the preconditions we just discussed. So we try to reimagine what online spaces could look like, and we did that from the perspective of safety, from the perspective of inclusive content moderation, autonomy, all these different needs that people have. And what it means when I say speculative prototype, it really means it's not a prototype in the sense that a lot of designers are familiar with. So it doesn't need to be immediately be able to be implemented. It's really a way to open up the discussion and to broaden the imaginative space that we have when we think about these kind of technologies. So it's not like, you can just implement this tomorrow, but hopefully it will invite us to rethink why these spaces are designed this way. And one example, we have several, but I will just share one, and you can, if you are interested, you can look up the rest yourself. One example that we designed was about control and autonomy. So this is a prototype we made based on Benjamin and Youssef, a couple who experienced going viral online without it being a very positive experience. So a lot of times when people post content online, they have little control over what actually happens with that content. So some people might want to go viral, others don't. Some people might want to go viral, but only in a specific set of communities. And the way these platforms are designed now is you have basically two choices. Either you share the content with maybe 100 people that you know, or the potential reach is 6 billion people, right? So this is a crazy thing that we're not used to at all in the physical world. So with this prototype, we we designed this viral alert to actually help people that go viral have control over their experience. So the moment you share content, you would be able to choose, okay, who do I want to share this content with? Is it a specific subset of people I know, or is it everyone on the platform? And the moment you do go viral, you have the control to actually also retract content and unviral yourself. And the platform could also help you with removing this content from other places online. And of course, this is far-fetched from how these spaces are designed now, but we see in the outcomes of this research that people really are able to rethink, oh, okay, so this is really something that is not how these spaces are designed now, but what are actually steps we could take in order to get here. Another prototype that is not in the presentation, but that's really interesting, is about inclusive content moderation. And what we came up with was, what if the moment your content gets removed from a platform, what if you could actually call with the content moderator, so have a video call with the content moderator that's removed your content, and just discuss face to face, like, hey, why did you remove this? What was your decision process? And really talk this through. And if you know how many people work in content moderation, for example, in the Netherlands, it's for most platforms, it's not more than 100 people speaking Dutch working there. So this is a very, very out there idea. There's no way that with the current system, these moderators have time to schedule half an hour video calls for all the posts they remove. For X, former Twitter in the Netherlands, there's even zero content moderators at the moment speaking Dutch. So it's totally against how these platforms work right now, but hopefully it sheds light on, well, do we want to accept that this is how these platforms work, and could maybe design research help us reimagine what these online spaces could look like? And I want to end with this quote from Afsane Rigot, so the person that came up with methodology design from the margins, and she said, if tech fails to design for the most vulnerable, it fails us all. So this is really, it's a really different way of looking at it. It's not seeing people as edge cases or collateral damage, but it's really centering their needs, and otherwise technology does fail us all. So I hope I shed a little bit of light on how we use design research in this project to actually reimagine and improve online environments. But I'm really curious to dive into the discussion and discuss with each other this method and how it could maybe also work in your institutions. Thanks.